And Mom is so devoted to little old lady. She's such a kind person. I've never known anybody.
No, but
Yes, you are. It makes me happy to be an old person in your hands.
my mother was the youngest of 5 girls, born to a Scottish-American mother and an Irish-American father in Spencer, Massachusetts. Although her father was a Worcester judge, there was never much money for anything deemed unnecessary. In all her years at primary and secondary school, she never had a brand new dress.
I was very stringy and covered with freckles, even though my dad said they were God's kisses. I wore the first overalls that a girl wore in Spencer, and my hair was cut short. I had an extremely free and happy childhood. I loved school and did well. My father taught me a great deal. Harlene's Journal.
My father was born in Providence, Rhode Island. His grandmother was Abigail Williams, a direct descendant of Roger Williams, who founded the colony of Rhode Island. I always thought he was so well named, Still Man. He rarely became angry or showed great emotion, although he did like a good laugh. He didn't throw back his head and laugh, but his tummy would jiggle up and down, and his face would get red, and his eyes would sparkle. Both of my parents entered Bates College in 1912, and by the end of their sophomore year they were engaged. That engagement lasted for 8 years, and my mother found it a very long and often lonely time.
I know that although we are happy now, we can't help recognizing the lack in not being united in every way. But keep happy, dear. What we are doing is necessary and is more than eclipsed by the knowledge that we love each other more than anything or anyone else in the world, and that we are going to be completely happy together. Ray Stillman to Harlene, 1921.
Finally, in 1922, he and Mother married and moved to Wareham, where my father began his practice, which was to last for 40 years. In 1927, we moved to a wonderful big house facing Main Street, and beyond that the Wareham River. The traffic through town was terrible in the summer. You had to dash to get across Main Street. In the winter, you had time to eat half an ice cream cone as you strolled leisurely across the street.
Ain't she sweet? See her coming down the street. Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Ain't she nice? Look her over once or twice. Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she nice? Just cast an eye in her repeat. Don't you think that's kinda neat? And I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet?
Krista was content as long as her head was in a book. And no matter what you did, it was all right with her, usually. As long as you didn't disturb her too much.
I'm just breezing along with a breeze, trailing the rails, roaming the seas, like the birdies that sing in the trees, reason to live, living to please.
Very close. Yeah, but we did have arguments sometimes, like whose turn was it to play the piano. So I think you know this story. The only way I put my arms down on the keys, and she put her arms on top of mine, and we stayed there and stayed there. We were so glad when Mother came home and broke us up.
Breezing along with a breeze, I have been a rover since I was a child.
I never, except for that piano time, I don't remember really getting mad at her.
Really?
For careful, knocked around all over, kinda grew up wild. My home's wherever I may be. I'm just breezing along with the breeze, trailing the rails, roaming the seas, like a vagabond, like the birdies that sing in the trees, pleasing to live, living to please.
She was 2 years older, and Ray was almost 4 years young.
Over my head, and when I'm weary, Mother Nature makes me a bed. I'm just going along as I please, breezing along with the breeze, the breeze, the breeze.
What was your relationship with Aunt Ray?
When she got older, we became great friends. But when we were children, she was so much smarter and so much younger. And I think I told you this. One time I came in the room and Ray saw me come in, and she was at Mother's desk, and she took a piece of paper and she was covering it and writing something. So of course I fell for that, and I wanted to know what it said, and she was writing it. And so finally I started to yell at her and everything, like, "What are you doing? What are you writing?" And Mother came in to see what the problem was. And she said, "Oh, Ray, why don't you just show what it is?" So she said, "Well, all right." And she handed me the paper, and it said, "Ruth is a dope." Even to this day, I laugh when I think of it. But
Did you
back
laugh then?
I thought it was clever.
Yeah.
I did. I couldn't get too mad because I had fallen for that. And that's the kind of thing she could do to me.
Yeah.
She was very social. She had her own friends. She always had a lot of boys that thought she was pretty nice. She was more controlled and very self-assured.
Yes.
And she had a big gang of people that went to Pinehurst Beach, and she was a very good long-distance swimmer, and she was always had lots of ideas, and Natalie was her friend. Natalie didn't have any siblings, and she thought of Ray as her sister. And Natalie didn't like me too much, and I realize now that it was because sometimes I thought of myself as Ray's sister when it was convenient to remind her.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but to her, Ray was everything.
And listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in.
Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western sky. On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise.
I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences and get...
Fanny was the lady from the Cape de Verde Islands whose sister had opened her umbrella and popped out her eye.
Oh, dear.
Yes, so she had a glass eye. And Fanny was with us for all as far back as I can remember. She did everything. She took care of her, she cooked, she cleaned.
Were you a lot closer to your dad than to your mom, or just it was
Yes,
a different?
because Dad thought what I had to offer, which was sport, athletics, was something that he was interested in.
Yeah.
And Mother could have cared less.
Yeah.
And I always did better in front of Mother than I did in front of Dad.
Oh, because of the
Because I
pressure?
knew she didn't care.
Yeah.
And, and I knew
Nope. The
he
pressure.
cared a lot. And if I saw him, he'd often park on the bridge looking over the bogs when I'd be playing ice hockey with the kids, and if I didn't see him. But sometimes I'd see his car.
And then you'd get...
And then they'd be all right. I didn't seize up.
And you can trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you...
I think that Dad was proud of me. I think they both, I know that he realized that I wasn't a scholar. But I think he realized, I always thought Mother didn't think I measured up, because that was the important thing to her.
Yeah.
And she couldn't help it.
But you got good grades.
Oh, Chris sent me some after not too long ago, and said, I always thought you were so terrible in arithmetic, and look at this report cards.
Yeah.
There were B pluses and even A minuses. Yeah. But what I couldn't do naturally, I did in effort. I tried very hard.
Right.
Why did you think she felt you didn't measure up? Would she make comments to you, or you just felt like she liked Christmas?
Well, she was trying to teach me math, and she'd take my hair and she'd say, subtract, subtract, subtract. And that I associated subtraction with getting my hair pulled.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. It takes all kinds, but I didn't think that I had what it took to compete in that family.
What was your basic impression of her, of your mother as a
Very
person?
proud of her.
Yeah.
Tell for sweet Jenny Lee.
I was very proud of her. She had a wonderful sense of humor. She cared about people who were having troubles, and she knew how to help them. And she was great in town affairs. I was always very proud of her.
Something in her style. She's got a bit of...
We raced every week.
Oh,
Yeah.
who got you into that? Nana or Grandpa? Were they both
Grandpa
sailors?
was going to buy a sailboat. He thought we lived right on the bay, and we didn't have an awful lot of money. We had money more money than a lot of people. But when the Ocean Spray, Mr. Makepeace, found out that he was going to have, I guess he was going to take a loan out so he could buy a hair shop, he told Dad that he would like to give us the boat, and because Dad had helped his family a lot, and so he bought that boat for us, and he used to follow every Sunday that they had in the paper who won, and we won a lot because we had a wonderful teacher who knew every rock and the tides, and he was the reason we won. We complimented one another because she, after Jimmy left, she became the strategist, and I was the one that held the till. And so it was, we didn't win as much as we used to.
All the time. When she went away, the blues walked in and met me. If she stays away, all rocking chair will get me. All I do is pray the Lord above will let me walk in the sun once more and go on. Everything that is gone, stormy weather. Since my gal and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time, keeps raining all the time.
To say
I have
family.
to say, I guess I was kind of one of the leaders of my class. It was because I was quite a good athlete.
And you weren't
And,
afraid to stand up to people.
And for some reason, I did seem to be kind of a leader. I think I was president of my class. And I think I was fair to everybody. I do think that. And I am reminded of that time when they stoned the Jewish girl.
Right.
And they knew I would have gone down and helped any one of them. I went home for lunch every day, for noontime. Noontime was our big meal. While I was there, a lot of people were, Natalie was one of the few Jewish students, very smart, and she was coming back from school. She had to go through the field to get back. And so I don't know how it started, but everybody, when I got there, I rode my bike up the hill and got there, and I saw that they were all lined up. And they took turns, and they started, when I said, "What are you doing?" And they started throwing rocks again and said, "Jew, go home, Jew." And I couldn't believe they were doing that. So I walked down. You had to climb over some rocks, and I walked down the field, and I told her to take my hand, and I was furious. I was just kept my eyes on them, and I thought, I'll get the first one that throws a stone. And they knew it. They knew I was capable of mischief. And we went back to school.
Nobody threw.
Nobody threw anything. And I never thought to tell my parents about it because Mother kept quizzing me, what happened at school today? And I said, I told her, well, we had this class and that. And she said, Mrs. Kepler called. And I said, oh, yes. And she said that Natalie told me what happened. And she was almost ready to come home and she saw me riding up the hill on my bike. And she thought, I'll just wait and see if she does anything before I come home. And luckily, I came through for her. It didn't occur to
Because
me not to.
She knew you would. Yeah.
Well, I hope she did. I would have done it for any of them. And her parents said, you know, they had a department store in town. They said they would have taken her out of the school and left if they, you know.
Yeah.
And it just, they waited until Dad, they called his office and said, I want Mrs. Stone to get on the phone too so you can hear what happened. One was my friend, and we'd go sailing together, and he would take me hunting ducks.
What was his name?
And take me fishing. He had a catboat. We'd go out, but I always thought of him as my friend.
Do you remember his name?
David Eldridge.
Gee, you have a good memory.
How old were you when that was?
I was in high school. I had boys, I guess. Well, I did have one that I liked, Robert Balbone. And I do remember that we went to a party, and we had, was it spin the bottle or something like that?
Yeah.
Where you go in and you give a kiss?
Yes.
And I didn't want to. I didn't want to do that, but I got. It came up and didn't want to be a spoiled sport, and it really knocked me for a loop.
First kiss?
Yes, and I really was so impressed. When Dad came to pick me up, I said, I can't believe what happened to me. I went in. I had to go in because they caught me with the wrong number or whatever it was, and it just felt so strange.
What do you remember what his reaction was?
A memorable time took place on Sunday, September 18, 1938. We noticed that the color of the sky was very peculiar, kind of an orangish red. The wind was blowing, but not unusually hard. Dad received a call from the family of a heart patient who lived with speech. They said that the water and wind were building up awfully fast, and could he come and get the patient out of harm's way. The familiar call, "Let's go," rang out. My mother, my younger sister, Dad and I piled into our brand new car and took off for the beach. He parked his car in sight of the water, but well back from it. He went to get his patient, and we went to get a better look at the big waves. Before we knew it, a huge wall of water was building up offshore and coming in fast. We turned around and ran, but the water caught up to us. My mother stepped off of a curb and went out of sight, but quickly bobbed up again. We could see our car, but the water was already covering the windows. We just kept going until we hit dry land. The new car was a total loss and not yet insured. Houses were completely swept away all along the shore. Dad was able to get the patient out, but they both had a very narrow escape. We had to we took turns telling stories before we went to sleep. And Peter Dufo, who's the poet, always had the best, scariest stories. He had wonderful, scary stories, and those nights were a little bit fierce when it was his turn. But we all had to take a little turn. Yeah. And Uncle Newton and Aunt Claire, and they were wonderful. They had very definite rules.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go out in the boat until you had passed his rule of his okay, that you were ready, and swimming and all of that. And we'd have breakfast, and then we'd usually have some chores. You're supposed to make your own beds and tidy up and that sort of thing. And then we were free, and of course we went swimming just about every day. And we would take tissue paper and roll pine needles and smoke. And it was very strong. And then we decided we'd try corn silk. And you dry it a little bit so it's not wet. And that wasn't much better, but it felt very risque. Yeah. And one of our cousins had a horse. They had two families. The Dufaults had a place, and the Proudies had a place. We stayed at the Proudies. Ray stayed at the Dufaults. And if you cleaned out the stall, Peter would let us ride the horse for a little bit, but you had to work for it. So there was, and then there was a big, wonderful dog. His name was Graft, and he was around, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Long ago in years, but vividly clear in memory, came girls, children, played and swam in freshwater Lake Lashaway. Day after day, in rain or shine, in between, they rolled around, past wassels and rossels to pick or bite pond lilies and carry them back to the camp on the hill, sweet aroma filling the air like syrup. How simple was the life, with rarely an angry word. Old man soup endlessly played, front porch conversations in tune with rocking chair's rhythm. Ruthie, Chris, Sue and Click, Peter, Speedy, Lynn and Penn, David, Moat, Dick and Matt, Mary, Graff, Uncles Newt and Roll, asleep together in one big room. Were the sheets ever changed? How was it done again and again? What was the answer? Was Mrs. Vivia the clue? Perhaps today, with someone else here who was there, answers can be found. But whether 60 years ago or 50, memories are always fresh when happiness and life are linked together in warmest love. So as symbols of all that has been good and lasted, clear and true, except white pond lilies with strong, faithful scent, as tokens from an inadequate roster, grateful to be included on this special day for Ruth and Luis. Congratulations.
I did have somewhat of a beau in college. He was not sure, and so I did not capture his heart. And so that was that. My father said, "Why don't you go to Mass General? They have a very good nursing program."
And that was
And
that.
what he said was, "We'll
Yeah.
take you."
I first saw the light of day on February the 3rd, 1926, at Mercy Hospital in San Diego, California. We spent the next 4 years in San Diego, but my only memories of this time are of my first solo street crossing in front of our house. The names to which I answered in those days, and in fact as long as my parents lived, were Tata, Viejo, and Pelón, hairless or hairy. My parents bought their first car, an Essex, soon after my birth. The Essex took us on many excursions around and outside of San Diego, an area that remained my parents' favorite even after a lifetime of world travel.
There's a silver moon on the Golden Gate, smiling through along the blue Pacific shore, while it shines above on the one I love. Silvery chimes caress the arms I'm longing for. My heart is light as I sail tonight on the crest of the western sea. There's a silver moon on the Golden Gate, and my love is waiting there for me.
In 1930, after 4 happy years in San Diego, Papa received orders transferring him to Buenos Aires, Argentina. We traveled through Los Angeles and embarked on a Norwegian freighter, the Hardanger, for the 45-day trip to Buenos Aires. The crew rigged a makeshift canvas swimming pool over one of the hatches, and I recall paddling around in it.
Is not so keen, because thou art not seen, although thy breath.
I remember the captain taking me on the bridge and into the engine room, 2 vast areas that fascinated me on all subsequent ocean voyages.
Ship is fading, most loving, we're falling, then hey ho the holly, this life is most jolly.
The passage through the Panama Canal is my strongest memory of that trip. I spent the whole day on deck watching with fascination as our ship was raised and lowered in the locks, then towed along by the small, powerful mules. These operations are as vivid today as if I'd witnessed them yesterday. Buenos Aires was our home for a year, of which I have little memory.
Then sigh not so and let them go, and be you blithe and bonny, oh blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe into hey nonny, da 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 hey nonny no.
I was 4 years old. My favorite apparel in those days was a sailor suit whose cap band proclaimed me a member of the crew of the Sarmiento. I remember being treated to rides on llamas and other unfortunate beasts and taking walks on the Parque Colón with my parents.
Oh, trip no further, pretty sweet.
We were delighted when after 1 year as vice consul in Buenos Aires, Papa was transferred to Rio de Janeiro with a promotion to a junior grade of consul. The country was relatively calm and the year we spent there was happy for me.
Brasil, meu Brasil brasileiro, meu mulato risoneiro.
At about age 5, I was a pupil at a real school now, the Anglo-American, and proudly wore the school blazer with its vertical black and crimson stripes.
O Brasil, meu amor, terra de Nosso Senhor.
Classes were enjoyable, but so was almost everything else in Rio. We lived in Edificio Olinda, a tall apartment building at Avenida Atlántica 1050, across the street from the beach and in full view of Rio's beautiful harbor. My school was on Copacabana, facing the beach, on whose sands we spent part of each morning in sports. After school, most of the afternoon found me there as well, usually in the company of my parents. I perfected my sandcastle building technique with the assistance of my first two girlfriends, Betty Greeder, a Swiss lass, and Joan Miller of Manchester, England. When not on the sand, my principal means of locomotion was a red tricycle with a huge front wheel, which I rode even on our apartment's balcony. Carnival, Rio's famous days-long pre-Lenten fantasy, was an exciting event. I remember the dancing, singing stream of flamboyantly clad humanity, the arcs of paper streamers and clouds of confetti filling the air. Most interesting to me were the little silver metal cylinders filled with perfume under pressure that one sprayed on fellow revelers. Some of the songs sung by the crowds come whistling out of my head, songs I hadn't heard for 60 years. Other memorable adventures were trips in the cable car to the summit of Palo de Azúcar, the Sugarloaf, or to that of Corcovado, the Hunchback, whose towering statue of Christ was completed while we were in Rio. It was outside the city, and my school was right around the corner, Elwood School. I Googled it, it's still there.
Is it?
The library is still there,
Wow.
and the apartment building where we lived is still there. Because I remember, I have very vivid memories of Philadelphia. We were living in Philadelphia, and I was 7 or 8, something like that. And we lived 2 houses down from the local public library. And I used to love Seaton's books, and I pulled them all out. And he used to, it wasn't just about Indians, it was how to build a birch bark canoe. And I would read that in great detail. And how they tied knots, and how they cooked their, everything about Indians.
Miles to get jive, that southern style solo jive, that makes you want to dance till break of day.
Our biggest event of 1932 was our trip back home to Mexico City during my summer vacation. The train trip took several days, and I enjoyed every minute of it. There was often a crisp, beautiful morning view of Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl in their rosy snow covers. I thrilled to the calls of the itinerant street vendors. "Ay jicama! Ay guajolotes!" The up and down scales of the knife sharpeners' pipes, the calling and answering whistles of the serenos, the night watchmen, the crowing of the cock at dawn, even in the city, the morning aroma of tortillas and tamales cooking in countless little open shops, the lilt of Mexican Spanish, recognizable anywhere in the world, the sweet odor of Mexican leather shops and goods, the colorful and aromatic open markets and tianguis, the wonderful humor with which Mexicans poke fun at their tragedies.
When you awake,
For at the very break of day, the peanut vendor's on his way.
Tio Genaro made a strong and lasting impression on me. He said he loved everything about books, reading and possessing them, searching for elusive ones, even smelling and touching them. This passion for books either rubbed off on me or we shared a gene. He was very kind and encouraging to me. Well, I've never been one for, I haven't been captivated by any of the current literature for some reason. I've always been a century behind my age in my tastes. And one of the reasons that my parents call me El Viejo, the old man, because in some way I was even older than they were.
Give me a kiss to build a dream on in my imagination.
In New York, we lived in Long Island, in Queens.
Sweetheart, I ask no more than this, a kiss to build a dream on. Give me a kiss before you leave me, and my imagination will feed my hungry heart. Leave me one thing before we part, a kiss to build a dream on. When I'm alone with my fancies.
And I went to PS 69, which is still there. It's considered, they say they're the best public school in the New York system.
Really?
I remember mostly because one of the classes we had, which I thought was cool, was we had to bring in a bar of ivory soap, and then we would carve it into little animals and things. I thought that was kind of cool.
Give me.
And then there was a pretty young girl that sat in front of me who had long hair. Her name was Ellis Trevelyan, and I used to like to pull her hair. She hated that. In 1935, when we boarded the Cunard liner Laconia, boarded it in New York and set sail for Liverpool. I enjoyed every moment and, encouraged by the officers, explored the entire ship. One drizzly day we came in sight of the long Prince's Landing stage and the tall Liver building with its twin towers, and we soon set foot in Liverpool. Before long, we moved into a small house at 27 Kilmore Avenue in Mossley Hill, one of Liverpool's suburbs, and settled into a 3-year period which was to affect me as much as any other in my life. Yes, I loved England. I'm very much an Anglophile and have been ever since we went. My parents and I were a close-knit trio, and we had a jolly, talkative time. After careful investigation, my parents concluded that the best school for me was Holly-Lee, a private boarding and day preparatory school called public school in England. We were interviewed by the headmaster, Mr. Lely, a large, round, balding man with an imposing mustache, red cheeks, and twinkling eyes, who always wore a waistcoat, complete with watch chain, the very model of an English headmaster. Holly-Lee School was in a lovely old building that may have been a huge private home when first built. Situated on spacious grounds behind a high stone wall, it was approached by a long semicircular pebble drive. I well recall that pebble drive because of the many times I fell on it on my bare knees, necessitating a visit to headmaster for painful washing and stinging painting with tincture of iodine. Our school uniform consisted of a navy blue cap with 3 holly leaves at the front, a navy blue blazer with the same device on the breast pocket, gray flannel trousers worn by the upper formers, or shorts worn by the rest of us, and gray woolen socks folded down just below the knee. During our 3 years in England, we toured the length and breadth of the island, usually during my summer vacations. On weekends, we usually went off in the Buick on exploratory trips and picnics. Thus, little by little, we got to see most of Great Britain.
Let's say goodbye with a smile, dear, just for a while, dear, we must part. Don't let this parting upset you, I'll not forget you, sweetheart. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies chase those dark clouds far away. And I will just say hello to the folks that you know. Tell them you won't be long. They'll be happy.
My favorite places were the country and seaside, especially the Lake District, the Scottish Highlands, Devon and Cornwall, particularly St. Ives, Penzance, and Land's End. Yorkshire with its Scarborough, Whitby, and York itself. Scotland has special fascination because of the rugged country and Papa's keen awareness of his roots. In Edinburgh, he and I were photographed in full Scots regalia, he in the MacGregor tartan, I in someone else's because they did not have my size in MacGregor. Both of my parents were elegant, conservative dressers who found their sartorial element in England. Their clothes were made by the best local tailors and couturiers. Papa's features, the noble nose, the strong jaw, the blue eyes, fair complexion, and his apparel complete with Homburg or bowler hat and furled black umbrella, were the embodiment of the English gentleman. Mama's black hair, hazel eyes, and outgoing nature suggested Spanish blood, but it was pure Irish. I thrill to fortresses such as Edinburgh and Stirling castles and to the history and skullduggery at Holyrood Palace. Yes, there was Bibi Ceballos. She was the daughter of a Salvadorian consul. He was Salvadorian, his wife was American. Her name was Julia. She was a friend of my mother's. And Bibi was their daughter, a nice-looking woman. And they used to invite me to their place. They used to have a place in Wales near Carnarvon, which was called Plas Tyrian, which means Happy Palace. It was a very lovely little place they had overlooking a bay.
You're asking me, well I'm asking you, why don't you practice what you preach? I've had a lot of time to do some thinking, staying home alone every night. Taking time to do some talking, separating wrong from right. Now you're always telling me what I ought to do, telling me it's wrong to look at somebody new. Oh, you're telling me, well I'm telling you, why don't you practice what you preach? Always telling me to wait until you call. I wait and wait and wait, and you don't call at all. Oh, you're calling me, well I'm calling you. Why don't you practice what you preach? Tell me that I'm your sugar pie. You swear that you'll never tell a lie. You even say that you hope to die. How come you say with your fingers crossed? You're always asking me to name that certain day. Then you change the subject and you think it's okay. You're telling me, I'm telling you, why don't you practice what you preach? Why don't you tell me, why don't you practice what you preach? Why don't you tell me, why don't you practice what just you reach. Why don't you practice? And it was sweet in ancient time, walk upon England's mountains free, and was the whole.
We were sad to leave England. We had relished every minute of it, and those years left their mark on me. I had formed closer friendships than ever before, except for my cousins, and I would miss them all. Leaving Holylee was especially difficult. For me, it was almost like leaving home forever. We packed up, boarded our trusty Buick, and drove off to Rotterdam via car ferry. In Rotterdam, we moved into a roomy boarding house by the bank of the Maas River, the navigable western extremity of the Rhine. From our windows, we could watch the heavy traffic of barges, freighters, and Holland America and Hamburg America liners going back and forth day and night. Then we moved to The Hague, where at Van Alkemaddelaan 215 we rented a two-story, partly furnished apartment which was to be our home for the next 2 years. The apartment was spacious and comfortable, with front rooms looking out on Van Alkemaddelaan. At one extremity of the wide and pleasant Van Alkemaddelaan was Hagsebosch, a large park in the city. Its other extremity was in Scheveningen, a fishing port and resort on the North Sea, just 2 miles from our house.
Ich freu mich auf ein Wiedersehen, auf Wiedersehen, leb wohl. Wir haben uns gefunden, geliebt und heiß geküsst. Es waren schöne Stunden, die man nicht mehr vergisst. Ein Märchen geht zu Ende, drum reich mir deine kleinen Hände. Gib mir den letzten Abschiedskuss, weil ich dich heute verlassen muss, und sage mir auf Wiedersehen, leb wohl. Wir haben uns so heiß geliebt, und unser Glück war nie getrübt. Drum sag ich dir auf Wiedersehen, mir treu sein wirst, sollst du mir nicht sagen, wenn man sich wirklich liebt, stellt man nicht solche dummen Fragen. Gib mir den letzten Abschiedsgruß, weil ich dich heute verlassen muss. Ich freu mich auf ein Wiedersehen, auf Wiedersehen, leb wohl. Gib mir den letzten Abschiedsgruß, weil ich dich heute verlassen muss. Und sage mir auf Wiedersehen, leb wohl.
Gib mir den letzten Abschiedskuss, weil ich dich heut verlassen muss.
Ich freu mich auf ein Wiedersehen, auf Wiedersehen, leb wohl.
Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I seek when we're out together dancing cheek to cheek. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and the cares that hung around me through the week seem to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak when we're out together.
For the first time, studies became my favorite part of school, and my report cards improved, and one proud day I was awarded the coveted head pupil badge, which I still possess. My friends and I biked extensively around Holland, where the land is flat and the bicycle seems to have the right of way over all other vehicles.
Don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek.
At about 4 o'clock on the morning of May 10th, 1940, I was awakened by loud noises outside, and rushing out to my balcony, I saw a number of German bombers circling overhead for a run on a Dutch army barracks situated about a half-mile from our house. so I spent more time than usual riding my bicycle all around the outskirts of The Hague. I had made a note of fields or canals where I had seen German planes crash when they were hit by anti-aircraft fire, and now I tried to find as many of the wreckages as possible. I took pictures of them and relieved them of any bits of portable booty, but since I was usually not the first on the spot, there was a dearth of interesting debris. I rode out to Scheveningen and along its dunes photographed the Dutch coastal artillery emplacements which the Germans had now taken over, and also the batteries that they set up to protect the dikes from the Dutch as well as the English. Two destroyers met and escorted us the rest of the way in. On our last night on board, there was a gala dinner with copious amounts of food and entertainment put on by various passengers. We received a warm welcome in New York, and our odyssey was reported in the New York Times and in Life magazine.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand, because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a toot-a-toot, toot. He blows it eight to the bar. In boogie rhythm, you can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar are playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And when he plays boogie woogie bugle, he was busy as a bee. And when he plays, he makes the company jump eight to the bar. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Do 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 riata do riata do do. He blows it eight to the bar. He can't blow a note if the bass and guitar isn't with him. The company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Puts the boys to sleep with boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early bright. They clap their hands and stamp their feet.
The taxi ride up the length of Avenue Louis Pasteur, with Harvard Medical School looming at the end of it, is etched in my memory. Those 4 years were a beginning without end, a forge in which were shaped mind, character, habits, behavior, emotions, even the body. A major sea change in life, imparting a new tack, bearing on a new universe. By the end of the first year, I was hopelessly hooked on medicine and never looked back again.
You sigh, the song begins. You speak and I hear violins. It's magic. The stars desert the skies and rush to nestle in your eyes. It's magic.
I was so taken with her beauty, her lovely smile, her intelligence, and her constant readiness to give of herself and to help others that I could not see enough of her. And for weeks, even after she went back to Mass General Hospital, I would arrange to have our paths cross accidentally. The mere sight of her approach rendered me a jelly of joy, a symptom I have to this day.
When I first saw him, I couldn't find the fetal heart on this person. And this man was coming down the hall. He was sort of portly, with a rather thick mustache. So it didn't occur to me that he wasn't a regular doctor. I asked him if he could please come in and listen to see if he could hear the heart. And he came in and he heard it. And I was so relieved. But that was the end of it. I didn't think of him after that. I just was very, very grateful.
Yes.
And then he sort of began to appear everywhere. And then he gave me a business card with his name on it. Well, you can imagine my astonishment at that. And then it went on.
Were you immediately smitten with Mom, or interested, or... I mean, I know
I thought she was...
Was it because she asked you for help, or was it as soon as you saw her?
I thought she was good looking.
Yes, she was.
And she was polite and obviously respected me because she thought I was a visit, not a medical student, which is what I was at the time.
Okay.
He had wonderful tales to tell, all about all the traveling he did, and he had a wonderful sense of humor, and to be in Holland and then with the Nazis, and it was just so intriguing and interesting. Well, he was somewhat the pursuer.
Yeah.
But I soon realized that this was a good thing.
Yeah.
I was very lucky, and as you know, we trust one another completely. And he's so smart. That impresses me so much. And I love his sense of humor. And I couldn't live without him.
Most of all, we enjoy each other's company and shared experiences. To say that we've been happily married is an understatement. We consider our marriage to be one of our great good fortunes.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. If your heart is in your dream, no request is too extreme. When you wish upon a star as dreamers do, fate is kind, she brings to those who love.
Here.
We are very lucky. We're very, very lucky. And there are a lot of people that, you know.
And I'm very lucky because she's such a kind person.
Fate steps in and sees you through. When you wish upon a star, your dream